Hello! One of my bookish highlights from this year was traveling to the city of Dublin to attend the Dublin Literary Awards, and nominations for this book prize are made by librarians from all over the world. And it was thrilling to see author Michael Crummy win this award for his excellent, thrilling novel, The Adversary, or The Adversary, and speak to him immediately after he won this book prize. And I made a whole vlog about this experience of traveling to Ireland and attending the ceremony, so I'll put a link to that in the description below in case you haven't watched it already. Now, librarians are extremely knowledgeable. They work with books all day and they have very, very good taste. So I was so excited to see that the New York Public Library has posted their own lists of the best books of the year. And you can look for books for adults or teens or children. And they break these down into further categories, which you can search through. So I'll put a link to this in the description below as well. So you can go have a browse for yourself. And within all of that, there is a fiction section in which they have selected 12 books as their tops of the year. And I have read 6 of these books. They're really interesting choices. Some of these books I've not seen discussed in other lists. And some of the other books that I haven't read, I haven't heard of them at all before, but now I'm so keen to seek them out and try reading some of these other books. So I'm going to go through their 12 choices, give their descriptions of them and why they've selected them, and if I have any of my own thoughts about these other books. Now, the very first book on their list is one which has been appearing on a number of lists before, and it was listed for the Booker Prize this year, Audition by Kitamura, and they say, shortlisted for the 2025 Booker Prize, Katie Kitamura's best-selling new novel follows 2 people, an accomplished actress and an attractive young man, who meet for lunch in a Manhattan restaurant. But who is he to her, and who is she to him? And yes, those are the big questions in this very twisty story, which feels like as I was reading it, I kept feeling like, the ground was being pulled out from underneath my feet, or the rug was being pulled out from underneath my feet. And I was trying to figure out what was happening and coming up with my own interpretations of the events of this story, which is in some ways like a mind puzzle, but in other ways, it's a really emotional story about aging, about relationships, about the degree to which we perform for other people and just out in our everyday lives. And there's so much to consider in this novel. I read it with my online book club, and we had such a great discussion of it. And every reader will have their own interpretations of this story, and it was designed to be that way. So yeah, I definitely recommend reading this. It will definitely get you thinking. Now, the next book on their list is The Book of Records by Madeleine Thien. In this rich family saga, Lena and her father arrive at an enclave called the Sea, a staging post between migrations with just a few possessions. There, Lena meets characters and hears stories from different time periods, coming to understand the role of fate in history. That's such a beautiful summary of this novel, which is absolutely one of my favorite books that I read this year. It was such an impactful experience, one that I immediately went back and started rereading because I wanted to luxuriate in the beautiful language of this story, but also consider further the really deep and meaningful ideas that it presents and the situation it presents of this father and daughter story of a daughter who is at a much later stage in her life is looking back at this crucial period in her life, trying to figure out the truth of what happened and why she and her father had to leave and what happened to her own family. But then also there are these other figures from history who were also going through tumultuous periods and how their stories enter into this narrative and how these figures themselves enter into the narrative is so creative and awe-inspiring that I was convinced that this novel was going to win this year's Booker Prize before the long list was even announced. And I was so surprised that it wasn't listed. I'm scandalized that it wasn't listed. I'm going to have to ask my good friend, Sarah Jessica Parker, why it wasn't listed for this year's prize. No, I'm just kidding. We haven't had any contact since meeting her at the Booker Prize ceremony. Although, I'm happy to have a chat with Sarah Jessica if you ever want to get in touch with me. Now, the next book on their list is The City Changes Its Face by Eimear McBride. Set on a rainy Camden night in December 1996, Eimear McBride's fourth novel, a sequel of sorts to The Lesser Bohemians, finds actors Ellie, 20, and Stephen, 40, retracing the course of their 2-year love affair to uncover what went wrong. And this story, it took me a while to get into. I mean, unlike the Book of Records, once I got 50 pages into this book, I went back and started from the beginning. And then I got, I think, 75 or 100 pages into the book, then went back to the beginning again, because the way that McBride uses language, it takes me a while to reaccustom myself to her style of writing, even though I've read multiple books of hers before. But yeah, so this definitely took some labor to get into this story, but it was really worth it. I think it's not my favorite book by her, and I don't think that you should go into reading this book without reading her previous book, The Lesser Bohemians, and understanding about these two main characters' relationships, before getting into this new story. But she has such a unique way of writing that considers our perspectives and how we interact with each other and our relationship with memory, and that is incorporated into the style of her writing, which I would really recommend reading her writing aloud, because that's when it really comes alive for me. So yeah, this wasn't my favorite book of this year, but definitely a really interesting one. Now, the fourth book that they have chosen is The Director by Daniel Kehlmann, and this has been appearing on a number of Best Books of the Year list. Translated from the German by Ross Benjamin, a novel inspired by real events, legendary film director G.W. Pabst flees to Hollywood to resist the Nazis, only to be forced to return to Austria and, at the orders of Joseph Goebbels, create propaganda films for the Third Reich. And so I got a copy of this book recently because it's so many people have been talking about it as some of the top books of the year. And in the comments, I know a number of you have been saying how excellent you think this novel is. And so, yeah, I'm so looking forward to reading this, hopefully over the next few weeks. Now, the next book on their list, I've not heard of at all. Fresh Green Life by Sebastian Castillo. In this darkly funny novella, an antisocial academic who shares his name with the author plans to end a year-long vow of silence at a New Year's Eve party where he hopes to reconnect with old classmate and crush Maria, whom he learns from social media is recently divorced. So that does sound like a really intriguing story, and I always find it really interesting how when the author tries to bring or seems to bring themselves into the story of, having a character whose name is the same or very similar to theirs, or who share a lot of traits with them, how, it kind of plays with autobiography and fiction in that way. So and I never heard of this book or this author before, I don't think. So really like to find a copy of this. Next is Heartwood by Amity, Gaige. Any woodsman who says he's never been lost in the woods is a liar. Valerie Gillis is an experienced Appalachian Trail hiker who goes missing in the woods of Maine in Amity Gaige's thrilling 5th novel. But why did she really disappear? And this does sound like a really intriguing thriller that I've been meaning to read this all year, and it's been sitting up on my shelves, and for some reason I've just not got around to it. So part of the reason why I really appreciate lists like this is it prompts me to finally get to these books that I've been meaning to read ever since getting a copy of them. And of course, this is set in the state of Maine, and where I was born and raised, and where I visited recently to spend Thanksgiving with my family. I think this would be a great book to read over the winter period to sort of remind me of Maine. The next book is I Gave You Eyes and You Looked Toward Darkness by Irene Solà, translated from the Catalan by Faye Lethem. In a remote farmhouse, an impossibly old woman lies dying. Family and caretakers drift in and out. All the women who have lived and died in the house are waiting for her to join them. They're preparing to throw her a party, and that makes it sound more happy than the content of the story is, which I did read. This is a very sinister and dark, although I would say darkly funny story, and I had the wonderful privilege of reading this while I was on a trip to around Catalonia, and I made a whole video about this book with the beautiful backdrop in the behind me in the background, talking about this book, which it now makes me really nostalgic if I go back and watch that video and seeing that beautiful landscape again. And this novel, which I read aloud in its entirety to my husband while we were driving around Catalonia, it is mesmerizing. It's quite confusing. There's lots of characters. There's lots of shifts backwards and forwards in time. But the moment-to-moment experience of this story is so surreal and strange, and yes, very darkly funny that we were compelled all the way through. We were laughing aloud at many different points of it, but we were also kind of wincing at different parts of it, because it gets very descriptive about certain things which are slightly it gets a bit gross in some parts. I'm not gonna lie, but this novel is so unique in how it brings the history of this region and the history of this family to life in such a creative way that traverses between life and death, and doesn't seem to have much distinction between them. The next book on their list is the Jamaican collective of the Shante Dream Arkive by Marcia Douglas. A dazzling mosaic of characters comes to life in this surreal work of eco-spiritualism by Whiting Award winner Marcia Douglas. And there is so much packed into just the title of this novel that it makes me really interested in finding out more about it. It's a book that I would definitely want to read more about and read some reviews of, or skim some reviews of, before understanding whether it'll be a book that is really for me. But it definitely sounds creative and unique, and as I've already been talking about, I do enjoy stories that kind of bleed into the surreal. So be really interested in looking into this. Next on the list, The Living and the Rest by José Eduardo Agualusa, translated from the Portuguese by Daniel Hahn, whose name I've seen quite a lot on translated books, and he's been nominated as a translator for the International Booker Prize before, hasn't he? A cyclone traps a group of writers from across Africa on the island of Mozambique during a literary festival in a witty novel where the border between fiction and reality is a permeable membrane. What a great description. And yeah, this book seems to really fit into the style of writing that they've been choosing for the books on their list. And yeah, and this is a book that I've not come across before. And I'm not sure it's been published here in the UK. It's published by Archipelago Books, who publish a lot of great books of translated fiction. But I don't think their books come out here, or at least under that publisher title. But yeah, I'd really like to look into this. Next is Perfection by Vincenzo Latronico, translated from the Italian by Sophie Hughes. Digital nomads Anna and Tom curate an Instagram-ready dream life for themselves in Berlin in this gently savage deconstruction of well-to-do Anami. This book, so I read this when it was listed for the International Booker earlier this year, and I struggled a little bit with this book. It's a very readable book that I enjoyed the experience of it. I felt like the style in which it was written, I kind of understood why he uses this slightly more distant style of writing. You don't get much at all about these characters' emotions or their inner lives. It's all sort of describing them from the outside, as if, you know, it's a kind of like study of these modern individuals who consider themselves to be very modern, but then kind of struggle and fumble to find their way in the world. So I didn't entirely love this book, but it's a very interesting one, both in its style and its subject matter. I found it compelling, but yeah, just didn't totally love it. Stoneyard Devotional by Charlotte Wood, which I know some readers outside of the United States have been a bit confused about why this has been appearing on some Best Books of the Year lists from the US, but because it was only published in the US finally this past year. I'd read it in a previous year. It was one of my favorite reads from that year. Burnt out and in need of a retreat, a middle-aged woman leaves Sydney to return to the place she grew up, taking refuge in a small religious community hidden away on the stark plains of rural Australia. But disquiet interrupts this secluded life with 3 visitations. That makes it sound like a kind of like a Christmas story, doesn't it? Of 3 visitations. But there's nothing, I would say, particularly festive about this story, but I absolutely loved it. It's such a meditative book that looks at how to live in the world today. Actually, it fits really interestingly alongside Perfection, the previous book. But I found this a much more emotionally compelling experience, as well as an extremely thoughtful one, as it looks at the way of how we can try to enact positive change, around us, while also trying to preserve, our own sanity in amidst the seeming insanity of the modern world. And the Librarians' final top fiction choice of the year is The Wilderness by Angela Flournoy. National Book Award finalist Angela Flournoy's brilliant, compelling second novel is the story of Desiree, Danielle, January, Monique, and Nakia over the course of 2 decades as they navigate contemporary American life from the late 2000s to the late 2020s. Now, this novel has been appearing on quite a few of these US lists, so much so that it's made me really intrigued, and every description of this story makes it sound to me like this is a novel that's completely up my street, or down my alley, or however you want to put it. So in fact, just yesterday I went into Foyles, Charing Cross in London, and asked about a copy of this novel because I've been seeing it in so many different places, but it has not been published here yet, here in the UK. And they said a paperback is due to be published in April of next year, so apparently it's not coming out in hardback here. It seems really confusing that this book isn't getting a bigger publication because it's been getting so much acclaim, but I'm definitely intrigued to read it. I regret that I didn't pick up a copy of it when I was in the US recently. So those are the books on the Librarians and the New York Public Library's list of top fiction for this year for adults. But as I said, I'll put a link to this whole article below. It's really fun to explore and go look through the different categories and for different age groups. I would really recommend doing that. But I would love to hear what you think of their top fiction choices. Have you read these books? Are you intrigued to read them now? Are they also some of your top choices? Let me know all about that in the comments below. I hope you're doing well and having a good day and easing into winter and reading good things. And I'll speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.